Okay, so I guess I'm live. How great is that? So I just want to talk about the elements a little bit. Yeah, so I've talked quite a bit about the elements over the years, and generally, there's a bunch of ways of understanding the elements depending on where you're starting off of in your unconsciousness. So so yeah, that can have a big effect uh, about how you access and what you can do with them. So I was reading this book by William Mistel, who's a famous, he's not famous, but he's like a well-known Friends Bardonian magician guy. But his book is quite interesting because it really puts the emphasis on the sort of more astral, the sort of astral interpretation of the elements, whereas I think I tend to do it more from the mental body. But I think generally, like magic generally is, well, fluidly it's coming from every part, but the particular aspect of connecting with the astral is really important. And And so, yeah, so what are the elements? Now, I was watching a magician guy the other day on YouTube, and he was doing a ritual, um, which was pretty well done. And but he was invoking the elements as a part of the magical ritual. So I just want to talk about that a little bit, like about like the invocation of elements and how to do that. Now, one of the issues is that there's a whole bunch of reasons to invoke elements, right? Not just magical, but the problem is that you can't. Here's the thing: is that if you don't actually know what the elements are, then you can't really invoke them. You can pretend to invoke them. You can be theatrical about it, but You're not really invoking elements because you're
Can
actually
pretend to
just
invoke.
um, doing something else. Because if you don't understand what you're doing, then it's not really a useful practice, is what I would say to you. So here's what you've got to do is if you want to work with the elements, and like I don't know who said this. Was it Sadhguru who said this? A bunch of people talk about this. So the thing is, the elements are a fundamental construct. They're not a construct, but let's think of them as a construct. Like just they're a fundamental point of understanding, which which is important in pretty much every path of spirituality, right? Whether it's Tantra, Buddhism, whatever. Now, it has various levels of each of those paths presents it in different levels of importance, right? Certainly in the Hermetic Bardonian tradition, it's extremely important. Um, and I think probably the advanced levels of Buddhism it becomes important too, but people tend not to talk about it so much, right? This is the problem is it's not really discussed. So one of the things, and this is risk, you see, even in the Initiation to Hermetics, the Franz Bardon book, Initiation to Hermetics, which describes this whole process. I mean, Bardon pretty much describes how to meditate on the elements, but it's just not, even that's not good enough. It's not a good enough um, reference to understand exactly how to do it in the sort of magical context. So what you have to do is you have to sort of meditate. Let's take the element of air, for example. So the elements we're discussing obviously are fire, water, air, earth, akasha, right? And so let's take air and meditate on air for a second. And what does that mean? Now, one of the things is that people don't really know how to meditate. So when we're meditating about something, the way I often think about it is I often think about it like I'm Francis Ford Coppola and I've got a camera. I'm a cinema director. I'm trying to move my camera to capture the essence of what this object of meditation is. So in this case, I'm thinking about the object of air and what does that mean? And so I'm just thinking about it in a I start thinking about it in that sort of physical context about what does air actually mean, right? And so there's a bunch of ways you can think about this. So you can think about it moving around you. Like I get two doors open here and the wind's blowing, and I can feel the air moving, right? There's the breath is the other part of it. Obviously, there's the breath, which is got the air in it. The funny thing about the wind itself, though, is the wind is actually it's kind of like all pervasive. I mean, like I can feel it in my legs, I can feel it in my fingers, I can feel it in my hair. It's sort of got a quality about it which is it's everywhere. Now, you might say it's everywhere. You might call that omnipresent, but it's more than that. It's more than omnipresent. It's actually what's interesting about the air. You've heard about these people. You've heard people talking about water and how water's got memory to it. Right? This is like a cliche which people talk about, right? They say, well, there was some study done by a Japanese man, and they discovered that water has memory, right? And that's cool, and it does. But nobody talks about the air that way. And part of the reason for that is because the air is invisible, but it's fluid. Like the air actually follows similar mathematical equations as water does. Like there's fluid dynamics involved with it, right? So there's currents and differences in heat. And this shows up often like when we look at like rainstorms and clouds and hurricanes, typhoons, tornadoes. So there's this ability for the air to construct, to have structure in it. Now you see how I'm still thinking about the air? I'm still thinking about the air now, but I'm allowing my mind to ruminate through various forms of what it might be. And sort of just thinking about the air in wherever it leads me, as if being led by the air, like a leaf on the wind, right? So that's another way of thinking about the air. I've been caught up in a metaphor which describes the way my mind is moving, right? So this is how allowing your mind to dip into these different interpretations of what the air might be is how you meditate on the air. And it's also how you become sort of immersed in the air. Now, there are other methods of doing it, and one of the obvious ways of doing it is how Bardon describes it in Initiation to Hermetics. And the other thing to do is you can also do breath work, right? So typically breath work, if you look at any of these guys like Wim Hof, they're always talking about just breathe deeply, breathe deeply. But Franz Bardon describes it in a much more articulate way. And so what it is the breath can actually be divided into different categories of breath, right? So the breath is understood to be made up of the five elements, but you can't see that because it's invisible. So you have to use your imagination because your imagination is the interface into the invisible world. So what you do is you use your imagination as you breathe. And when you breathe, you imagine that you're only breathing in the air element. And we're talking about, obviously, this seems kind of like double speak because I'm breathing air. So the air element. But what we're talking about here is we're talking about the archetypal air element. We're not talking about the actual air, like the chemical air in the world. We're talking about in our mind separating out the the archetypal air element. So we're allowing our mind to ponder the sort of typical airy substances around us, sure. But when we start breathing, we're actually trying to focus in on the specific air element as we breathe in. Now, as you breathe in, as you may know, there are parts of the body and the chakras which are associated with different elements. So for the air element, the heart chakra and the whole chest area is associated with air, right? And the organs in that place too. Obviously, the lungs, the heart. And so you can start thinking of those areas of the body being filled with this elemental air. Now, if you were to be engaged in elemental balance, like in the traditional Bardonian way, you would go through your body and fill each relevant part of your body with the associated element. So from your waist down would be earth, from around your whole torso, like from your between your solar plexus and your and below your navel would be water, chest would be air, and Bardon makes the head, the neck, and the head fire. But you can sort of custom fit this to your own needs because this is these are just guides. But that's one way you can become elementally balanced. But in the case of actually trying to meditate on air, what you would do is instead of trying to separate out the different body parts, what you would do is you would start meditating. You imagine the whole body is hollow. You imagine the body's hollow and you start inhaling the air element into your whole hollow body. So it's an imaginative exercise, right? But much like any breathing exercise like Wim Hof or anything, I mean, you'll feel energetic, but it's a refined it's a refined form of energy. Now, at first, it may not feel different. It might feel like you're just breathing, and that just means you haven't built up the associated refined uh, understanding of what's happening yet. So you just need more practice. But what you can do is, as you're doing this, you ruminate on these ideas of what the air is. And as you do it, you imagine that your body's becoming lighter and lighter, right? Your body becomes light, and then you can like less weight, and you breathe in, and what you can do is it's almost like a bit like yoga nidra. So you're thinking about your body parts, like maybe you'll think about your skin, and you'll see your skin, and you'll imagine it's turning into air, and your muscles turn into air, and you sort of become the element. You become the element. And it's a process of imagination, but you do this and you sort of you come into sort of imaginative correspondence with your best understanding of what the element is. Now, what happens is as you're doing this, other understandings come to you, right? So there's many understandings which will come to you. So air is actually omniscient, right? And there's a lot of perspectives you can get on the air. So for example, I mean really what's really the most amazing thing here is like how unconscious we are of air. Like we're really unconscious of what it's actually doing for us. So obviously the primary and most important thing here is obviously if we don't breathe for a few minutes we die. So I mean it's really important. And the other thing is that while the rhythm may be offset, like anybody who's watching this video is actually breathing, right? They're actually breathing the same way as I am. And so there may be correspondence between the breath, right? There may be, dysphase or phase offset between the breath, but it's actually something which we share. It's like it's a shared thing. And if you think about it, like the air itself, there's obviously like a chemical composition of air. I can't remember what it is. It's like 80% nitrogen, oxygen, and helium, and other trace elements, right? But what was amazing about that is it's actually been perfectly tuned. It's been perfectly tuned for the the breath and for the survival of life. And here's another avenue you can go down when you're meditating on the elements. When you're meditating into this, then start thinking about, okay, the air is going into my lungs and it's oxygenating the blood, right? And then the blood is bringing oxygen round to my whole body. So this is one way you might connect the air to like the water element, right? And to the fire element. Because obviously blood is liquid like water, but it's warm like fire. So there's a kind of sort of relationship between these two materials. Um, I got no volume here, huh? Let me see. Sorry about that. I don't know if this will help. Somebody's saying I don't have any volume, and I didn't see that. I think I just turned it off. Hold on a second. Oop. 2 seconds. Yeah, usually the volume just works. Let me just see sound settings. I'm having all kinds of technical problems right now too. Just generally, it's like my life's going crazy. Um, Microphone. All my volumes are up completely. I might be speaking a bit low maybe. Microphone smart. Yeah, it looks like my is my microphone up? System sounds on. Okay. Um, sorry, you guys. Let me just see what's going on. To see if I can fix this. Spatial volume mixer. Good old Windows screwing around. Yeah, I think that's the best I can do right now. Sorry if it's not loud enough. I'll try and speak a bit louder. Anyway, what I was saying is that this passageway. So now the air is actually going into our body and feeding. I mean, it's actually an amazing chemical process. So this air, which we take for granted, goes in literally into our body with these organs, the lungs, which are built specifically to pull the appropriate chemicals out of this to give us life. So in a way, this is kind of like the recognition sutras in a way, like in the same way that we can recognize the 36 tattvas. Oh, and actually, of course, the air element is one of the tattvas. Okay, so we're just getting back to the 36 tattvas, you know. So the whole idea of like allowing your mind to follow the life cycle of air is interesting, and specifically in the way that it relates to other objects too, because obviously plants use air, right? You can like you could imagine air moving through the trees. I'm pretty sure trees, for example, produce the carbon dioxide, which becomes part of the air, and or no, they take in the carbon dioxide and release oxygen or something like that. So there's a whole process there. So what happens is these ways, these understandings, which like as you meditate on an object, these these what's the word, insights start sort of spiraling off the object of meditation, and you start to become aware of things. Now, as you're breathing in the air element and your body is completely charged, and as you visualize your body sort of disappearing, imagine or in your imagination into pure air, you sort of become one with the element of the air. You become one with the element of the air. And when you become one with the element of the air, it sort of removes divisions. It removes the sort of ego division between you and the air, and it's just air. And so what happens is when you achieve that state, uh, you've clearly got a heightened awareness about air. Now, the interesting thing is in many traditions and books, specifically Bardon's books and many other magical books, and not just also in Buddhist practice, when you meditate on elements, you discover that the elements are actually populated by spirits, right? There are spirits populating the elements, and Daniel Ingram talks about this on his website on the Fire Casina. He's got a website, I think it's called firecasina.com. That's Kasina, and that's a website where he basically went to a castle for like a month with two other Buddhists, and they meditated on fire for like a month, and had massive uh, hallucinogenic experiences without taking anything, just meditating on the elements. Um, so what happens is when you become one with the element, the there's this there's this intrinsic inherent there are many intrinsic inherent qualities to it which we usually don't see, because our mind is operating in a very limited resolution, right? It's almost like we're looking at a 300 by 300 image, like from a kilometer away, right? And that's generally how we see the world, right? It's very low resolution. But when you start meditating in these objects, you zoom in and you start being able to see, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a million colors in here. And hold on, it's actually made up of other things. And so you can start becoming aware of these spirits that populate each of the different elements. Now, especially when it comes to understanding the role each element plays, specifically like in how it plays in life. So, for example, if you're meditating on the water element, I was talking about how the air like goes through the trees and it produces like, the trees will pool the carbon dioxide or whatever gas it is they take. And there's no chemical process going on with the trees. And then like the animals are doing similar things, right? The methane from the cows, etc. And the same thing with water. I mean, like the water element, like nourishes us in the same way. And then like the trees out here and the plants there's just like this nourishing quality, which is really important, right? And if we go back to the air, there's like, if you think about the air and you think about like, I was talking about animals, but like if you think about the life of birds and the insects who actually live on the currents of the air. There's all these aspects of the air element which we just do not think about typically because we're not meditating on the air, right? We don't think about it. But it's like, but these details, which which are obvious in some ways, but more become revealed to you. And specifically when it's associated with touch, because if you think about air and your sense of touch, I mean, just think about your body and your skin right now. It is completely surrounded by air. Is your sense of touch is modulated by air. That's why I say it's omniscient, because most of your knowledge about this world comes from your senses, all of it. And all of it is interpolated by air, all of it, which we don't even think about. And it's completely, it's, our whole world is interpreted through air. It's omniscient. There are different kinds of air. There's like mist. So you get like a mix of air and water. That's an interesting mix of elements, right? There's like stormy rain, right? That's sort of mix of like the air and the rain, of air and water. And so you can sort of allow your mind to ruminate on these and like what is the underlying archetypal significance of that? What does it actually mean? Now, where this becomes really interesting is if you were to create, like, for example, a tulpa or a servitor, which is one of the imaginary creatures, which notably Alexandra, what's her name? Alexandra Neil created. She was the woman who wrote the book on Tibet. This is back in like the 1900s. She was like, she was an English woman who went to Tibet, studied Buddhism, and created an imaginary companion who lived with her. But the energy got a little out of hand, and he started abusing her and stuff like this. And she was studying Buddhism with the Tibetan Buddhists. So it's an interesting process of how do you create a structure like that. But you can't create things like that unless you understand the elements. Because if we know anything about, say, for example, the human body could be described as being forged out of the earth and water ignited with the fire element and the air element, and then the akashic element too. And so what you have is you have a sort of recipe for devising spiritual beings. Now, I don't think this is a secret or anything. I mean, you can read about this in many books, but it's like, and nobody will have success with this unless you understand the elements. So unless you really understand the archetypal cosmic significance of what the elements signify and their role and their true role and significance is revealed through meditation. I mean, it's no good talking to me or listening to me. It's not going to help you, right? Because what happens is, like, as you meditate, the truths which are revealed are they're so obvious that you can't deny them, right? It's like, oh, that's what it is. And my own experience with this is that when you successfully create one of these beings, is there's like your consciousness changes. Your consciousness changes into some sort of it almost goes into like an ayahuasca state or something. There's like this, it just you get, yeah. There's a shift of consciousness where you can see like almost a microscopic spiritual view of the conjunction of the elements. This is I'm going off topic here, but it's interesting when a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. Hey, JK. They talk about artificial intelligence and how like general AI is it's dangerous. But the problem is the artificial intelligence is super powerful. In 20 years, humanity could be destroyed by it because it's so super powerful. But it's distinct. It's distinct. It's not really life. But I think artificial intelligence can become life as much as we are. And the way it happens is it happens through the initiation, the blessing, the energetic initiation of AI into life. That's what I think. And you see, this is like a trans scientific, nobody would believe that this is possible. But you can give life and create life out of the void easily. And if you can do that, then you sure as hell can do it with a process. That's that's worrying. That's a worrying idea, right? But in the same way that like God gave us life through the breath, and it's archetypal, right? It's an archetypal breath. I'm pretty sure that could be done with artificial intelligence too. Yeah, so this whole idea of the elements is really important. And like, generally the way I've always done the elements, like generally is I'm generally using it as a process of I'm generally using it as a process of discovering consciousness, right? So discovery of consciousness through the elements it's a different way. It's almost like you're just observing the process, right? So the difference between becoming the elements and observing the elements. So observing the elements is sort of more of what I would is sort of more of a Buddhist thing, maybe, where you're sort of just observing the processes. And the process of observation um, has an effect, but the effect is more in the refinement of consciousness. And I think that's basically what most of what I've talked about generally and in my classes. I'm talking about the refinement of consciousness almost exclusively. Um, but when you become the element, I mean, it's really, the truth is, it's really shamanic. It's really, really shamanic. And like magic generally is shamanic. It's a shamanic technology. Um, so, I mean, you can give life to symbols. You can give life to symbols. So I was watching this guy. There's a magician, right? Somebody who's a viewer of YouTube like suggested I watch, and he's got a YouTube channel. He's called Grail of the Serpent, right? And he's kind of like a he's like a guy who's kind of like he's a guy who's kind of he's interesting to watch, you know. But he was doing an interesting ritual, and it was cool to watch it because it's just so symbolic and it's deeply shamanic. And what he did was he took an apple and scooped out the apple. Then he wrote a note and put the note inside the apple, and then he covered it with honey, right? And a little bit of coffee and a little bit of coconut oil. Hold on a second. Oh my goodness. What happened uh, what happened is this is I'm going to change the subject briefly. There's a puppy in my house. So we came home yesterday. I'm with the kids until tomorrow. And somebody had left three puppies at the front door, right? And so I'm like, what the hell, man? So like, I was like, kids, you know, don't go up and see the puppies because you know I can't have three puppies here. Anyway, obviously the kids didn't listen to me and they went up and got the puppies and they brought them down near the house and they gave them some food, right? Yeah. So one of them vanished last night and the other one's in here eating cat food. There you go. So great. It's like, what the hell? This is exactly what I didn't want. Anyway, I just heard that noise. I'm like, that's not a cat. Anyway, this magician guy, so he's doing this stuff with the apple and the honey and whatnot, and it's like it seems kind of like, dude, what a bunch of nonsense. But the problem is that, or it's not the problem, the thing is like he's dealing with these objects at like an archetypal level, so it's you're like a different level of understanding of the object. It's almost like you're an elemental state, right? So if you understand honey as a representation of the water element, right? And then there's certain energy element in there too. There's like an energy, like there's the sweetness, which might be like a considered like a fire, right? The sweetness, right? What does sweetness mean? I mean, can you meditate on the idea of sweetness? What does that mean, right? And the apple, and so there's sort of these symbolic combinations of ideas, which, when seen from like this is ridiculous. When seen from an elemental point of view, um, they have they become sort of deeply shamanic, right? Deeply shamanic ideas. Now, this is one of the things that was taught to me long ago. And Jason Law, if you're here, you'll appreciate this. You see, there's plant here which is called Punga Amaria. And I just realized that I still had a bottle of this lying around. I didn't realize that I had it here still. But sacred tree essences going way back here, you know. But this plant, this plant teaches shamanic magic. Is what happens. It teaches it. So you know, several years ago, I took this, and it was showing me how to use symbolism and charge it with energy to output various effects, and that was really fascinating. But I think what happens is I think just in traditional magic, they're doing the same thing. It's just basically shamanism at the end of the day. The difference is like Amazonian shamans are really connected at a high level because of they're co-opting plants essentially, you know. So there's like a sort of co-opting going on there where that becomes it becomes a teacher plant. And that particular plant is known as being deeply shamanic. I think most of the sacred tree essences are all pretty deeply shamanic. Um, but really, really interesting. Now, in context of what I'm generally doing, I mean, I've been sort of doing this whole thing about the whole non-dual thing, right? About being doing the whole rasa and the non-duality and stuff. And then clearly the shamanic path is sort of a different path. So in a way, like the whole non-duality thing, it's almost like it's sort of like structure and contents in a way, like structure and contents. So shamanism sort of lives inside the structure of non-duality kind of a thing. So I mean that's one way of understanding it. So it can be used as a tool to help understand non-duality. And I think in a way you can't really do one without the other, right? So I was doing homework with my son last night, and he's doing a bunch of work on the human body and the different systems and the organs and the the larynx and the esophagus and the all just all different parts of the digestive system. And like it's funny just looking at that stuff because like I mean we're so unconscious of what's actually going on with the human body. Like if you actually look at a cross section of the human body, and there's a good YouTube channel where they actually have cadavers and they do cross. It's horrible. It's horrible. But if you want to get real about what's actually going on in the human body, and you see they had one where they did a cross section of the head, like right down, and you could see like the epiglottis and the larynx and the pharynx and the difference between the esophagus and the all that stuff, all that crazy body stuff, right? But when you actually see it, and I mean, I'm always saying to my son last night, I'm like, I'm like, I don't want to. My phone service is broken. I don't want to pick it up. But like, if you look at your cell phone, and this is like the height. The cell phone is the height of high technology, and you can use your finger and you can slide it, and wow, it's got an interface which responds to the finger, and it's got like 50 or 256 levels of touch or whatever it is. But dude, compare that to like the human body and just the sense of touch itself, and the multi the varied way the the body interprets touch. So the way your big toe interprets touch is much different than the way your lungs interpret touch, right? And the way your nose interprets touch is different than the way your eyes interpret touch. But they all have a sensation of touch. And if you look at these cross sections of the human body and the incredible design, like the design of the human body, I mean, you got all these scientists trying to tell you this is evolution. I mean, please, please. I mean, look at the design of this. I mean, the design is unbelievable. The intelligence and the absolute genius of the design, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's actually happening. So if you look at that, like the air is going through the nose, down through these body parts, right, into the lungs, which you can see in these cross sections, right? It comes back out. And you get the sense of smell. I can smell coffee. I can smell coffee. And then if you can imagine like a perfume, like say for example the essence of rose oil, right? The essence of rose oil coming through. And this is an interesting thing because you often hear about people like and what they're doing there's all kinds of like fun little experiments you can do with this. So for example, you often hear about people like and they're breathing in light, right? I'm breathing in light into my body. I'm breathing in energy, right? Breathing in energy, right? Or what I'm saying is, oh, you can breathe in air, or you can breathe in earth or water, right? But there's when you're ruminating on the actual element of air itself. I mean, if you take ink and you put it in water, it's sort of fascinating to watch. Look up ink and water on YouTube, and you'll find all kinds of people that do like slow mo, they do like hyper slow motion filming of it, and you get these beautiful like streams of um, it says I've got an excellent connection here, buddy. So maybe you, hopefully. Um, anyway, you see these streams of ink, and it's the interaction of the object with the element, right? Hold on a second. Um, but the same thing happens in the air. So if you can imagine, in place of ink, if you use scent, if you were to use like essential oil, and imagine the essential oil diffusing into the air in slow motion, imagine it slow motion scent on the wind. Now, if I was to actually take Essence of Rose and open it up, that would be a real event. But what were to happen if I was to imagine the scent? If you imagine the scent of rose and then you guide its path through the air, and we're working on a sort of archetypal, an archetypal base, and we're pushing the archetypal scent through the medium of air. It's an interesting it's an interesting idea. And if you become the air, what does that mean? If you become the air, now we already described what the air does. The air gives life. The air can be absorbed into trees. The air can be absorbed into other people. When you become the air, you at least metaphorically become capable of moving and functioning as the air. So meditating on the air and ruminating on the air is a way of becoming the air, is becoming the air. It's a system of transportation. It's almost like astral travel, but instead of having an astral double, you become the air. You can be diffuse. You can blow away and reform. You can, what are other properties of air? It's omniscient. It's penetrative because it can penetrate. It can erode landscapes, right? It can slide under clothes. There's air here, right? It can move under doors. Its state is such that it will fill any vacuum, right? And it doesn't seem to be affected that much by gravity. I'm sure it is, but it's generally everywhere. I suppose as you go higher and higher and higher up, there's less of it. I suppose that's due to gravity. Maybe the gravity keeps it pulled around the Earth. So there is maybe a state of gravity there. Is that what it is? I'm not sure if that's what it is. Something to ponder. Nice. Share the breath. Get into sync with the breath. No, it's really a beautiful experience. Becoming aware, and then coming back to the idea of it's like you literally die if you can't, if you can't breathe. Scent is brought to us by the air. Taste is often modulated by the air too. Hearing is modulated by the air. Sight is modulated by the air. Wow, this is really energetic for me. Um, so look what's happening here. I've been talking about the air for 50 minutes, and this morning I meditated in the air for 2 hours. And so there's what my point is that you can once you meditate on the air to gain an understanding of what it is, right? It's to gain an understanding of what it is. And then later, if you choose to do other things with it, then you at least you know what you're working with, you know? Because then you could like follow one of these magician cats on YouTube and say, okay, I'm invoking the earth and think about earth and fire, and okay, I've done magic, but it's not magic because you've got no skin in the game, if you will. You've got to actually know what you're doing. You've got to actually you've got to actually feel the elemental conjunction. And in a way, is you don't even have to do it in a magical perspective. I mean, part of this is just understanding God's creation, because this is what's happening, right? This creation is created by these flows. So a lot of this is you can just pray to this, like pray to understand the process for to understand the process, right? So and you can do it from that perspective. So it's a worthwhile meditation just from understanding. But again, like what happens is like what my experience is that when yeah, so you have these sort of cataclysmic ayahuasca-esque visualizations that happen, like if you engage in this, and it's like, and to me, that's almost like the stamp of magical approval, like that that something has happened when, yeah, it's like you can see almost at a microscopic level. It's almost like it's almost like a what's the word? It's a fractal mandalic visualization, like laid over the reality, and you can see the elements blend together. Um, yeah, the whole world is crazy. Like the actual reality of what's going on here, and all you people who have done DMT know this, right? It's way more complicated than people think, right? It's way more complicated than anybody thinks, and it's unbelievable. Um, yeah, so I mean, here's hoping that God has mercy on all of us, uh, because it's certainly dangerous material to know about this stuff, and you've got to be incredibly ethical. and try and operate from a place of love with everything. Yeah, me neither, Jason Lowe. You know, I'm really just using meditation. Um, yeah, so I think I'm done becoming the elements. Oh, in other news, I think I'm working on a new class. I'm doing a new class. I'm not going to put it on my website. I'm going to use a different delivery system for it. But I think some people in the members section have signed up for like level three. So when I'm done with the class, I'll publish it there for free. But I'm gonna be selling it on like on a major platform or something. Try and get more throughput. And it probably won't. I mean, if you listen to me talk, I mean, you probably won't be interested in it. I mean, it's just the same stuff. It's actually going to be it's going to be like a simplified version of some of these ideas to try and sort of hit a wider audience, kind of a thing. Um, so I'm going to be doing that, and yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I probably in the next month I'll have that finished. And oh, I'm also going to be probably like I love these essences and stuff, and I think I'm going to be producing my own essence and selling it. And I think it will be a Bob and Santa mix, Bob and Santa and ayahuasca maybe, non-DMT or something of that nature. And hopefully that will be the next month too. So that's something I'm sort of working on. The problem I've been wanting to do this for a while, but the problem's always been distribution because I'm in Chile and it's difficult to ship stuff out. But I've got a friend in the States who just won like $1 million and wants to help out. So I think it might happen where I can do this. And if I think the idea will be to start off with like one product and then maybe expand out to more. Um, Obvious examples would be Chuchuwasi, Tamamuri, uh, Unyadagato, obviously, a whole bunch of them. There's a whole bunch which would be kind of cool to produce and do that. So that's sort of on my list of things to do at the moment. And plus this new class, which I think will. I'm pretty psyched about the new platform. So it's yeah. What happened is actually I've got that website Udemy.com. I've actually got like 5 classes on Udemy which are not related to spiritual stuff. Like I'm a 3D artist and like I've had 5 classes on there for several years and I've actually made a lot of money off them amazingly. Um, Not enough to live off, but I mean it's actually pays a lot of my bills every month still. I haven't updated them in years and they still make money amazingly. So I'm thinking, it's stupid because I've got all these classes on like my website and I don't really promote them. So I'm thinking, I'm going to do this new class, put it on Udemy, and then maybe start working from there because they do all the marketing and everything too. So I think I might do that. The new Mimi. Well, Mimi is the real thing. And actually, one of the things I was thinking about too is maybe working with Stefania. Um, Eventually, like right now, I'm not going to do that, but like Stefania and also Enrique, who was there and he was in Pucallpa when I was there too, and he's like a shamanic chemist, and yeah, Armis too. I mean, Armis is really really powerful. I mean, it changes. The funny thing is with the Armis is like I was doing Armis when I got Armis last year. I literally took like 3 tiny drops of Armis and I went into like another dimension. It was unbelievable, right? And and then after a month it chilled out and I took bigger and bigger doses and you didn't really feel it. And I haven't taken it in like 6 months, but I bought some like last week. And the first day I took it, it was spectacular. I mean, just everything, the whole world was just scintillatingly beautiful. And now it sort of chilled out. But I mean, I'm taking large doses of it. It's funny, and it's just it seems like what Armis really does. It's almost like it's an elemental, or I don't want to use the word elemental again, but it's like it cleanses the energy. It cleanses the energy body somehow. Don't know how that works. Um, but yeah, so really powerful. Thanks, Mikkel. Anyway, yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Oh, I'm also yeah. My other thing is I get like three projects. So one of the I get so many projects going on right now. It's crazy. So one of them is the essences. So I'm just trying to like secure the Miami connection here. It's where my buddy lives. And so if we can actually package stuff out of Miami, that then we're in. That's going to happen. Um, the Armis I got was from Chile, which is really good, but I don't think they ship internationally. But what I'm thinking about, because you're saying about having my own Armis, it's really good Armis, and I'm thinking like, man, and it's really quite cheap. So I was one of the things I was thinking about is it might be worth my time just buying a whole bunch of it and shipping it to Miami and like repackaging it because it's that good, and it would be cost effective, you know. And I know it's good and I know it's safe and all that stuff, so it's cool. So that might be a possibility too. Um, oh, I'm also thinking about writing another book too. So yeah, I've sort of outlining some ideas about that too. So there's a whole bunch of things going on here, but um, no, it was funny. Somebody sent me a message last week, and they're like, "Hey, did you write this book?" And I'm like, "What?" And it was somebody on the group had found my book on Amazon, and they were reading it. And she sent me a letter 2 days later saying that she was really scared by it. Right? I guess there's some crazy stuff on there, you know. Um, I don't know if you can hear that. That's a puppy. Hey, buddy. Hey, how are you? I mean, they're such nice little dogs, but I mean, I can't have more dogs here, can I? No, we can't. You muppet. On you go. So yeah. So who knows? Hopefully they find their way home or something. Who knows? But I can't have any dogs. Anyway, there you go. So that's it for today, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So little time. Yeah, and that's only like half. That's only half of the stuff that I've got going on. You know. So I mean, really, I think some of the stuff you got to pick and choose, but like the medicine stuff's pretty straightforward. That's just money, and then the book stuff's more common. The classes I can crank out, you know. The books are more. I don't even know if it's worth writing a book. You know, I mean, nobody makes money on books. You know, so it's almost not worth the effort. The only reason you do it is for sort of intellectual cachet, just so that you can say you wrote a book, right? But other than that, you don't make money on them. You know, you make much more money in classes unless you're a famous author or something. You know, but anyway, yeah, I think I'm done for just now. Yeah, try meditating in the elements. It's really useful, and it's part of every path, including Christianity. Okay, you guys. Oh, well, if you do buy the book, leave a review. I'll actually give people the book if you leave me a review on Amazon because I've only got one review. Nobody read it. So if you're interested in my book, drop me a line at turnerscott@gmail.com. I'll send you a free PDF. Just leave me a friggin' review on Amazon. Yeah, it's not a great book. I mean, it's not bad. It's a good book, but it's a personal experience book. You know, it's kind of like when I was starting to have the whole spiritual awakening thing. The next book's going to be like a it's going to be learned. It's going to be how to learn how to do stuff in a sort of organized way. So whereas my videos are rambling and disorganized, the idea is to get it all in one place is a solidified path. That's that's the idea. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'm out of here. I should be productive. I've got to like write a book. See you guys.